The clink of wine glasses, the soft hum of laughter, and the echo of polished shoes on hardwood filled the sprawling banquet hall. White linen covered every table, and flickering candlelight danced across the glass centerpieces. It was the annual Porter family reunion, an event I hadn't been invited to in years. But this time, I showed up anyway. Before we begin, drop a comment and tell us what would you do in this situation? Be honest, tell me in the comments below. We read every comment. Let's begin. I didn't come for closure. I didn't come to make peace. I came to return everything they gave me, pain, shame, and humiliation, gift-wrapped with a polite smile. Is that her? My Aunt Rhonda whispered, elbowing her husband, trying to hide the venom in her voice with a forced grin. I walked in alone, not wearing designer heels or dripping in diamonds. Just a tailored black jumpsuit and a quiet storm beneath my skin. My father stood across the room, holding court like a king. Gerald Porter, the man who once told me I was a stain on the family name. He raised his glass and said something that made everyone around him erupt in laughter. I didn't catch the words until I got closer. Oh, look who finally decided to grace us with her broke little presence, he smirked as I reached the table. The room quieted. Faces turned. I felt the heat crawl up my neck, but I didn't flinch. My father stepped forward, holding his wine like a prop in some sick performance. Did you walk here? Or are you still couch surfing, Rachel? Gerald. My mother tried to intervene, but he raised a hand sharply. You're nothing but a burden, he snapped. You can't even afford your own room, and you have the audacity to show up here like you belong? The silence cracked as laughter exploded around the table. Cousins, uncles, even people I'd once helped with job referrals. They all laughed. And that's when I smiled. The kind of smile you give when you know a secret that will shatter the room. I stepped forward, eyes locked on my father. Calm, controlled. Then I spoke, loud enough for every person in that glittering, judgmental room to hear. I own the building you all live in. The room froze. Excuse me, my Uncle Peter barked, blinking as if I'd spoken Latin. I pulled out a thin leather folder from my purse and opened it. The leases are under my holding company, Camden East LLC. You've been paying me rent for the past 6 months. Gerald, that deluxe condo you've been bragging about? My name is on the deed. All of them. No one moved. I could hear someone drop a fork. I turned to my Aunt Rhonda. You emailed me last week to fix the plumbing. Guess who approved the maintenance? Rachel, my mother whispered, eyes wide. Then I added, and since my generosity has limits, your next rent hike goes into effect tomorrow. Gasps. Shifting chairs. Faces drained of color, like a thundercloud had passed through the room. That's when they started to beg. Wait, Rachel, honey, don't be like that, my cousin Lydia said quickly, standing as if physical closeness could undo years of cruelty. You've misunderstood, my father barked, a crack in his voice for the first time. You think you're better than us now? Just because you made some money. I stepped closer until I was nearly nose to nose with the man who once said I'd never amount to anything. No, I said quietly. I know I'm better than the version of myself who used to believe you. I turned without another word and walked away from the table, the clicking of my heels slicing through the silence. Behind me, a storm had begun. But for the first time, I wasn't caught in the rain. I was the thunder. 3 years earlier, I didn't own anything, except maybe a dented laptop, a suitcase with one busted wheel, and the burden of every insult my father ever hurled at me. Back then, I was sleeping in a friend's laundry room, using rolled towels as a mattress. I was broke. But worse, I was invisible. No one checked in. No one offered help. Not even on my birthday. That night, I'd stared at the cracked ceiling, tears slipping silently down my cheeks, repeating the words he'd screamed when I left home at 19. You'll never make it out there. You're soft, you're naive, and nobody wants a Porter girl who's allergic to obedience. He was right about one thing. I was naive. But that version of me died the night I took a bus to New York with $163 in my pocket and a borrowed name on a lease application. It was in that dingy, forgotten co-working space in Brooklyn where I first met Amelia Hart. She was everything I wasn't: sharp, ruthless, composed. But she saw something in me. On my third night scrubbing bathrooms to cover rent, she slid me a business card while washing her hands. Camden East Investments, it read. Just a name, a number, and a logo shaped like an open door. What's this? I asked. She looked at me through the mirror. An exit. If you're willing to work like hell for it. I did. For 2 years, I poured coffee, filed paperwork, cold called landlords, studied property law during lunch breaks, and slept beneath my desk. I missed birthdays, holidays, funerals. But slowly, my world expanded. I started handling leases, negotiating short-term contracts, and scouting fixer-uppers in overlooked neighborhoods. I learned how to see value in things no one else noticed: abandoned laundromats, decaying duplexes, condemned brownstones. Amelia didn't coddle me. She taught me how to be sharp. Kindness is currency, she'd said. But so is power. The trick is knowing which one to spend. I spent both wisely. When Amelia retired early, she left me something I didn't expect: a loan. A big one. No strings, just a handwritten note. Now it's your move. You earned it. I bought my first building 2 months later. A year after that, my LLC owned 12. 6 months later, I saw the list of tenants in our latest acquisition, and my stomach twisted. Gerald Porter, Rhonda Porter, Lydia Porter. My family. I remember staring at the lease forms like they were some cruel prank. They'd unknowingly moved into a property I'd just acquired in a bulk deal. That's when I made the choice. I didn't want revenge yet. I wanted clarity. I hired private contractors for all the units except theirs. I sent their repairs to the bottom of the list. I watched as they posted passive-aggressive complaints on tenant forums, calling the owner incompetent. But they never guessed. Not once. They still thought I was broke, floating job to job, living in some shoebox, while they enjoyed rooftop views and wine nights. And when the reunion invite arrived, addressed to my old childhood nickname, Ray Ray, like I was still 7 and clueless, I knew it was time. But what I hadn't expected was how it would feel. The laughter. The humiliation. The way it twisted in my chest like I was 17 again, standing on the porch with my backpack and nowhere to go. I hadn't planned on saying anything. I just wanted to witness their ignorance one last time before quietly increasing their rent. But when my father opened his mouth and spat those words, something inside me shattered. And something stronger took its place. Now, walking down the corridor outside that banquet hall, I heard them scrambling behind me. Rachel, wait. Let's talk. No more stunts, Gerald. Aunt Rhonda hissed. You just insulted the landlord. I didn't turn back. Because I wasn't that girl anymore. I wasn't Ray Ray. I wasn't their burden. I was Rachel Porter, the woman they overlooked, underestimated, and discarded. And they were living on borrowed time. I didn't go home that night. I went to the top floor of the very building they lived in, my building, unlocked the penthouse, and sat by the window with a glass of orange juice and silence. I'd never lived there. Never needed to. But I kept the space pristine, fully furnished, untouched. Like a museum of what I could afford but didn't need to show off. And tonight I needed height, distance, perspective. From up here, the city looked calm. But down below in apartment 4B, I imagined my father was pacing. He always did that when he felt cornered. Hands behind his back, like a general preparing for war. But this time his war wasn't with me, it was with his own pride. And pride loses every time against truth. The next morning, I dressed in quiet authority, slim black slacks, a charcoal blouse, no jewelry. Just presence. Then I made the call. Hi. This is Rachel Porter, owner of Camden East LLC. I need to schedule an emergency lease review with the tenants of units 4B, 3A, and 3B. Yes. This afternoon. No exceptions. 3 hours later, I stood in the property manager's office as they filed in, my father, Aunt Rhonda, and cousin Lydia, all wearing expressions that twisted between panic and disbelief. What is this about? Rhonda asked sharply, settling into the plastic chair like it personally offended her. I didn't sit. I'm considering terminating your leases. Wait, what? Lydia's voice cracked. We've never missed a payment. It's not about payments, I said coolly. It's about behavior. About respect. About the way your family treats people it deems beneath them. This is insane. My father growled. You can't just. I raised a folder and tapped it. Actually, I can. The property manager cleared his throat awkwardly, but said nothing. He'd been instructed to let me handle this. You want the truth? I continued. You've been living under my roof while publicly mocking me. Mocking people like me. You called me a burden last night in front of 30 people. I didn't mean. You did. I cut in. And you meant it when you cut off my tuition. When you threw out my clothes. When you told me I'd be lucky if I found a job cleaning bathrooms. No one breathed. I did clean bathrooms, by the way. For 2 years. And I did it with pride because no one gave me anything. Not even a phone call. Not even a place to stay when I had nowhere. My voice didn't shake. It didn't rise. It was calm. Even. But it hit like thunder. Rachel, Rhonda said softly. We didn't know. That's the point, I said, eyes locked on hers. You never wanted to know. You just wanted a version of me that made you feel superior. The broken one. The poor one. The disappointment. Then I stepped closer to my father. I'm not evicting you, I said slowly. I want something better. His eyebrows raised in wary hope. I want you to come clean. I want a public apology. At the next family event, you'll tell them what you said. And you'll tell them the truth about what I've done, what I've built, and how wrong you were. You're blackmailing me, he spat. No, I said quietly. I'm teaching you. He stared at me. This man who once laughed while I cried now sat still, like a child facing a mirror for the first time and hating what he saw. If you don't do it, I said, the eviction notices go out Friday. And every friend you've gossiped to over the years will receive a courtesy letter explaining why, with your direct quotes attached. They left the meeting like shadows. Shaky. Hollow. Speechless. And for the first time, I didn't feel guilt. I felt peace. But I wasn't done. Because power isn't just about revenge. It's about rebuilding. And I was going to build something beautiful out of the ruins they left me in. I hadn't seen my mother alone in years. She was always next to my father. Never too loud, never too soft. Just there, like a piece of furniture he never noticed, but wouldn't let go of. She called me the night after the lease meeting. Rachel, it's Mom. Can we talk? I stared at the phone for nearly a minute before answering. My voice was cold. Automatic. Go ahead. Not like this, she said. Please. Face to face. I agreed, out of curiosity, not compassion. We met at a quiet coffee shop across from a small public park, the kind of place where kids ran barefoot and parents forgot their phones for a moment. The kind of place that didn't care who you were, only how you treated others. She wore a plain sweater, her hair pulled back tight, hands clutching her purse like a shield. I didn't sit right away. I only have 20 minutes, I said. She nodded quickly, swallowing whatever greeting she'd planned. I didn't know he'd say those things to you last night, she began, her voice breaking on the edges. I raised an eyebrow. But he's said worse before. In front of you. Her eyes fell to the table. Why didn't you stop him? I asked. Why didn't you speak up? I begged you once. I remember crying in the kitchen at 17, telling you I felt like a stranger in my own home. And you said, try not to upset your father. I was scared too, she whispered. I leaned forward. No, Mom. You were comfortable. You were comfortable letting him break me if it meant you didn't have to lose your seat at the table. And now that the table belongs to me, suddenly you want to talk. Tears slid down her cheek. She didn't wipe them. I thought you hated me, she said quietly. But I hated myself more. Every time I saw you on TV or in an article, I wanted to call. But what do you say to the daughter you failed? Try I'm sorry, I said flatly. That's a good place to start. I am. The silence that followed wasn't peaceful. It was jagged and awkward, like strangers sharing grief in a waiting room. Why did you come today? I asked. Really? She hesitated, then said the first honest thing she'd told me in 20 years. Because I don't want to die with your silence being the last thing I hear. My jaw clenched. I can't erase what I let happen, she added. But if there's a way back, even to a place where you don't hate me, I'll do the work. For the first time, I saw her not as my mother, but as a woman. A woman who'd let her fear rot everything good she had, then woke up alone in the ruins. I stood and placed my card on the table. You want to start? I said. Then leave him. She blinked. Rachel, if you ever want a real relationship with me, that's step one. I won't visit the house he owns. I won't pretend we're a family at barbecues while he mocks the waitress behind her back. You leave him, and you start over. That's the price. Her mouth trembled. And if I don't, then this coffee is our last conversation. I walked out. I didn't look back. The next morning, I received a voicemail. Her voice, barely audible, said, I'm staying at my sister's. You were right. I'm ready now. Not for you, for me. I didn't cry. I smiled. Then I opened the email from the reunion committee. Subject, last-minute addition to the reunion program. A few words from Rachel Porter. I leaned back and clicked reply. Confirmed. The next reunion was held at the same venue. Same chandeliers, same polished silverware, same fake smiles. But this time, everything had changed. When I entered, no one laughed. They stood. Some out of fear, some out of guilt, and a few, very few, out of respect. I wore a white suit. Clean, sharp, powerful. Not flashy, just undeniable. There was a podium set up at the far end of the room, and next to it was a banner that read, Honoring Legacy, Embracing the Future. I almost laughed. What legacy? One built on pride, silence, and cruelty. I took the mic when they called my name. My father sat stiff in the crowd, arms crossed, jaw tight. My mother wasn't beside him. She was across the aisle, beside her sister, her hands folded in her lap like she was praying. I didn't use a script. I didn't need one. Some of you remember me as the girl who left in the middle of the night. I began, my voice even. Some of you don't remember me at all. And some of you remember me only when it's convenient to shame someone. Murmurs rolled through the crowd. I smiled. 3 years ago, I had nothing. Not even a bed. I worked cleaning bathrooms while most of you forgot I existed. But I wasn't broken. I was building. In silence. In pain. With no support. And now, I paused. I own 12 properties across the state. I employ over 50 people. And this venue, the one you're all standing in, it belongs to my company now. Gasps. Whispers. A few people turned to look at the exits, unsure if they were standing on safe ground anymore. I didn't come here to flaunt anything. I continued. I came to expose something. I turned toward my father. You taught me that love is earned. That worth is conditional. That survival requires obedience. But I unlearned that. He didn't move. You called me a burden, a failure, a stain. And you laughed as the room followed your lead. But now, I looked around, voice rising just slightly. Now you all pay rent to the burden you tried to erase. People shifted, avoiding eye contact. Some were shaking their heads. One of my cousins was crying. I'm not here for revenge, I said, though I'd be lying if I said this didn't feel satisfying. I'm here to draw a line. Starting today, I don't carry your shame. I don't answer to your judgments. I am not Ray Ray, the family screw-up. I looked to the back of the room where a framed portrait of my grandfather hung. He'd passed before all this. He was the only one who ever told me I could be something. I am Rachel Porter, and I own my name now. There was silence. Then applause. Slow at first from someone near the back. Then scattered claps. Then more. My father stood abruptly and stormed out. No one followed. I left the mic and stepped outside into the spring air, the breeze tugging gently at my suit jacket. That's when my cousin Lydia approached. She looked sheepish, mascara smudged, heels in her hand. I was horrible to you, she said, voice raw. I didn't mean. But you did. I cut her off gently. You meant every joke, every whisper, every time you turned your back. She looked down. But you have a choice now, I added. Grow from it, or stay who you've been. She nodded slowly, eyes glistening. You're not what I expected. No, I said, walking past her. I'm better. That night, I stood in the penthouse again, alone, peaceful, complete. Not because they begged for forgiveness. Not because I finally had money or power. But because I reclaimed the narrative they stole from me. They tried to write me off. I rewrote the ending. And this time the story was mine.